What's the bet that we are 2 years away from Donald Trump breaking down in tears like Kim Jong-un over the state of women not having enough kids to support the country? Hello, my name is Grace. Hello to my sinners, my saints, my fellow ribs and the glories of men. Welcome back to another video. And it's always a fun day when the government, the US government, is talking about your favorite topic, which is pronatalism, and essentially how to convince more people to have more kids, because migration is not infinite and having kids is a good thing, especially for a country. And so the internet has been rife with discussion topics and this and that, and pretty much how to convince families that they should have more kids. And here are 10 ideas that I've come up with after spending years in pronatalist circles. Some are proven, some are unproven. And I've saved the most controversial one for last, which I actually disagree with, but I know every government is probably going to suggest it at some point, and I don't think it's actually an answer. So it's actually more of a non-answer. Anyway, let's get into it. Number one, of course, look, I'm a capitalist through and through. I don't like universal healthcare. I actually believe it causes poorer healthcare outcomes than a system like America, which is actually a leader in research and affordability, because people are paying up front for what they have to see, whereas in Australia, stuff gets really expensive and the government just pays for it, which ends up meaning I have to pay for it through my taxes. Anyway, of course, I would be remiss not to include some kind of healthcare support, healthcare subsidy, interest-free loan, something to make having kids a little bit more affordable, whether that's introducing an MGP program, whether that be some kind of home birthing program or something like that. I don't know what you do, but it is something that America has to wrestle with. If you want more kids, kids require a little bit of medical care, so you're going to have to consider the possibility of making that a little bit more affordable. I don't think Trump was wrong in considering a baby bonus. I think he was wrong in the way that he was considering it, because the implication given to everyone is that you have your baby and the government hands you a fat stack of cash. I think that's a bad way of doing it. Australia did something similar in about 2008, or was it a little bit earlier? It was the 2010s, early 2000s, and it did actually have a little bit of a boost. But ironically, a lot of things around that time, I think my dad jokes that TVs suddenly seemed to match the price of the baby bonus. So very funny there. But I think the government shouldn't be doing a baby bonus. They should be presenting it, and this solves two issues in one, as a paid maternity leave, a system that Australia has now instituted. So instead of just giving you a fat stack of cash like they used to in Australia, what they do is they give it in incremental weekly payments, and that can be a system through your employer, or that can be paid directly to you. As long as you have hit a certain amount of work hours, which is about 330 hours over the last 10 months, I believe. Like, it's really small. You're eligible for essentially what is 7,500 Australian dollars, paid in weekly installments. Oh my goodness. Which is essentially minimum wage, but for a lot of people is a really great cash bonus, especially when paid maternity leave is not a common thing in Australia. And so I think the US should do something similar, where they offer this baby bonus, but it's paid as an actual maternity leave. And so then you shut up people who are complaining about not having paid maternity leave, and then you also have the benefit of providing some kind of financial incentive for people to have kids after, or like have that postpartum support. And then on top of that, you've also got a slight incentive to encourage at least some part-time work in the lead up to the birth. I think it's a fantastic system, and honestly, My husband and I have done a lot of family planning purely around the paid parental leave. We're like, okay, so it'd be 10 out of 13 months from this month, and just making sure that we hit all of our qualifiers, because $7,500 is a lot compared to nothing. And I'm actually very thankful to the government that we had that opportunity and that time, financially not stressed. I went back to work pretty much as soon as that ended, and that was too early and it was harsh, but I'm very thankful for the time that I got. The most controversial one that has been offered in the past, loan forgiveness on your primary place of residence. Now, this was done under certain dictatorships, but I actually think it's a fantastic system to encourage families to have larger families and to start all together. So something like a 25% loan forgiveness on your primary place of residence with each child. Now, that is very expensive, and it's very tough now with housing blown out of proportion, so you probably have to bring it down to like 5 or 10%, and that is very expensive, but that's another option as well. This one's a little bit controversial, and I've added a caveat to actually protect the culture, because one of the big criticisms with the baby bonus was, well, now you're just going to encourage single mothers to have more children to deadbeat baby daddies, just purely for the sake of the cash incentive alone, and it doesn't actually help heal the culture in the long run, and it doesn't actually foster a family. It just creates more cycles and more generations of brokenness. And there's a sense in which I agree with that, because I live in the hood. I'm down with the reality of what it's like on the ground level. And so I think a fantastic thing to offer is tax incentives, in the sense of a tax discount. This was proposed in Texas, I believe, in a bill a few years ago, of 10% for each child, something like that. But instead of having the tax forgiveness on the mother, I actually think it should be on the father. And only in the case of married, cohabitating relationships. Because, like I said before, you don't want to foster that cycle of brokenness. You want to actually have a united family, because a strong family means a strong country. And so you want to make sure that with whatever bonuses or subsidies or incentives you're offering, it doesn't foster a motivation to just have kids for the sake of kids, regardless of the circumstances, and don't actually make an effort to change the circumstances. You want to make sure that people are having kids in good homes as much as you can. Say for each child that you are cohabitating with, that you're living with, there is a tax forgiveness on the father. Of course, this can be on the mother as well. I think Hungary did something similar. I think it was 25% per child. But yeah, that's another option as well. Back to Hungary, because they have so many pronatalist policies. I think they offered a subsidy on vans. My husband and I are slowly starting to look at what multiple seated cars look like, a 7 or an 8-seater car looks like, and we're like, whoo, secondhand, it's a little bit tough, but we know eventually, hopefully, we'll get to make that jump to a 12-seater. And so I know some countries are offering them a little bit more on the cheaper as well. That's another option as well. Here's a fun one that I came up with. Interest-free construction loans for homes over a certain threshold. For example, the home has 4 bedrooms, or the home is designed to foster a larger family. Obviously, how do you protect against just rich people with their mansions getting interest-free loans? I'm not 100% sure. Maybe you add in certain qualifiers, like obviously a certain amount of children. But yeah, that's another option as well. Obviously, a very niched approach, and definitely fostering a larger sense of the family, but that's something as well. Of course, and yeah, just a general baby bonus. We talked before about how Australia had the baby bonus for a short time, how it did actually get a slight bump to birth rates, and how it's become an iconic part of our culture. Obviously, I think there's better ways of doing it rather than just offering a flat cash bonus. But at least with a flat cash bonus, someone has the opportunity to use it towards certain baby items or to healthcare bills, or they have the freedom to choose. Of course, not a lot of people are smart with the freedom to choose, so you've just got to navigate that situation as well. Remote work, protecting remote work for women who have just had a child. One of the best things I think Australia has is that when you become the parent of you become a parent of an under school age child, you have the legal right to request remote work, and the office the business has to defend why it would be a net negative you working remotely. So, I mean, just a greater culture of remote work. It was so helpful to me being able to work remotely for the first, pretty much, I'm still working hybrid kind of situations. That was the best thing. Otherwise, I would have just have to have given up on work completely. But remote and asynchronous work allows me to work at home, work odd hours, catch up on projects at midnight if I have to, or 5 a.m. before baby wakes up. It really allows a lot of flexibility and allows me to still help financially with our home while we still have kids and while we have more kids. That's a massive benefit. I don't think there's particularly a system in America that would help support this, maybe some kind of payment into your 401k. But essentially a matching of pension or 401k. You know what I'm trying to say? Payments. I'm so sorry. Let me lay the groundwork. So in Australia, we have superannuation, which is pretty much our employer is forced by gunpoint and law to take about 10% out of our pay to put into a designated account, which is invested to hopefully keep up with CPI and inflation, to one day, once we hit mid-60s, to be able to cash that out. Now, it's a mostly pre-tax payment as well, which is a little bit better. There is a bit of tax on it. But when a woman often leaves work, she loses the ability to make similar superannuation payments towards her retirement. And so now the government, on top of their paid maternity leave in Australia, has now offered superannuation payments on top of that, which I think is fantastic because, yes, that still means that the woman is getting some investment into a superannuation in the future. So that's another potential opportunity that the US government could explore, superannuation payments or like some kind of retirement payment towards the future to offset the sacrifice that a woman does take to her career while having children and while raising children. I feel like everyone's going to mention this. So this is my most controversial one. I actually don't think it will help the overall birth rates. And Erica Komazar has done a lecture on this where she talks about this because it actually separates families more than uniting them. And remembering the intent is not only just to encourage birth rates, but to encourage stronger families and a stronger culture from that. Because you don't want to just be kicking the can down the road. You may have more kids, but you have more broken families. You don't want that. You want a more united culture, a united family. And so the suggestion that everyone always brings up is daycare. I want some kind of childcare, daycare, subsidised, something like that. I think there are some countries that have done this well. I think it's Sweden or another European country that offers a payment that can be done to a childcare or it can be done to like the grandparents. I think that option is great. Family, like a payment to the family, even to the mum, to care for a child or to an institutionalized childcare. But I disagree with making it only institutionalized childcare because ultimately that ends up separating the family and that ends up creating a lot of strife and struggles. And we are having more and more research come out about the dangers of childcare and how it harms children's development. And I know that's a very controversial topic. You're welcome to look into the research yourself. But I think I'll add this point. Daycare payments for the family. not for institutionalized childcare. So those are my 10 ideas for the US government on how to help your birth rate. Some of them already proven, some of them unproven. But ultimately, yes, the goal shouldn't be just having more kids. The goal should be a stronger family, a stronger culture, a stronger country. Anyway, that's all for today. Grace and peace from our Lord and Saviour, and I'll see you tomorrow.